Yeah, so actually we discussed doing, so people choosing songs in the most recent meeting we had, and a few people put their hand up to want to share, share a song or to decide a song that's sung in the service, and I was one of them, and so I'll be the first of that. So obviously, if you also want the same opportunity, I'm sure you can speak to my dad or Miriam or someone. But I thought, so alongside that, I thought I'd also share a testimony of basically what God has done for me in my life, more recently especially, and I thought it was a good opportunity because I needed to do it at some point. I thought it was a good opportunity to mix them. So that's obviously what I'm doing today. The truth is, this is my second testimony up here, which is in truth to my shame, but to God's glory. And I think the fact that it's a second testimony just means that God has done it again for me in my life. That's what I can say, that God has again brought me here to the front of the service. As you know, I've not been here many times before, to share with the church, different faces, different people maybe. Some people are the same. Just what God has done for me in my own personal life, and ultimately what God does in people's lives. The truth that God does work. He works as much now in healing people's souls as he did back then in healing people physically and their souls. And all this healing, it happens, the most amazing healing, as we were learning in Mark before, is Jesus healed first the sins, and secondly the man got the man to walk again. So obviously the most important thing is the soul. So I just want to kind of give you it's not a scripted thing, it's just kind of an overview of my last 10 and a half years of since I was baptized. I was baptized in 2010, I think the end of the year. Again, I stood up here, gave a testimony. God had done amazing things in my life. I'd turned a corner. I'd changed from worldly into spiritual, more spiritual minded, and singing the songs, and it's really a joy that I couldn't explain at the time, and that was genuine. And I'd had that for a while, but the what happened after that, I think, is it's been evident in, obviously, for anyone who's known me or for anyone who's been to church and not seen me on the evenings or on the Tuesdays or whatever. But basically, I'll start from the beginning of that. Over the last maybe about a year or so into that Christian journey, I was in college. For that, just straight after that, that was what happened while I was in college. I finished college. I got into a relationship, and I got straight into work at 17. I started working. I had a relationship. The girl was not a Christian. She was actually a Jehovah's Witness, and we would have debates about Christianity, and it was all kind of. We ultimately knew that we wouldn't actually be in a serious relationship, or it wouldn't ever lead into a marriage, because we both believed that it was ultimately we wouldn't be with someone who wasn't believing what we believed, right? But that went on for 4.5 years. So that was a relationship that went on for a long time, and gradually it kind of wore away that joy. That not that the relationship in itself was bad, in worldly terms. It was a normal relationship, and in terms of I wasn't being told don't go to church. I wasn't being told you can't read the Bible. I wasn't being told, you must hate God or you must turn away from God. But that was happening regardless. And gradually, I was gradually just turning away, starting to just kind of divert my attention. And as my attention diverted, so did my heart. To other things, to just normal worldly things, the job I was working at, going to full-time, progression in work, earning more money, or, and the relationship. At the end of the day, that was a big part of my life. Anyone who's been in a relationship would know it takes up a lot of time. You speak a lot. You're involved in each other's life in a massive way. So obviously that was the situation. So about 4.5 years, and gradually I kind of, as people have seen, I didn't attend the church as much. I'd maybe skip church services, and when I did attend, I was here, but I wasn't here, if that makes sense. And I was here because I've been here since I was born. I was here because I believed it, in terms of that I believe God exists, but not that I wanted to really live it. And basically, I went on like that for ages, and really after that, we ended the relationship, actually really amicably, strange really after 4.5 years, but we ultimately just said, this relationship is not going anywhere, so let's end it, and we decided to end it, and that was it actually. It was kind of a strange ending. But then the problem is, from that point on, God had given me an opportunity then, now you can come back to me. And instead, in my foolishness, I have to admit, I went into another relationship. Again, not a Christian. I guess I guess she was not very religious, but believed in God, but had like a Hindu and Muslim background, kind of a mix, but not very, very strong religion in any way. And again, talk about God, have discussions occasionally and things like that. But God wasn't a big part of our life or our relationship. And then, again, that ended. God gave me another opportunity to come back to Him. And that ended because she moved away to a different country. And God gave me another crossroads. And that same nudge, come back. Again, to my shame, I went into another relationship with another person who was not a Christian, again. And none of these relationships, no one was ever telling me don't go to church. No one was ever fighting against my belief in God. But the relationship was what was fighting against my belief in God. The time and the effort and the attention, and my heart was taken away from what was right to something that was wrong for me, wrong for my faith, wrong for my belief. And ultimately, if you have a relationship with God at the center, the relationship strengthens your faith. If you have a relationship that has no God in it, it just takes you away. And it's something that I've experienced for myself many times. And it sounds foolish talking about it. I can only say in the moment, and when you're in the relationship, you can make 101 excuses as to why you're there, and how God can be glorified in it somehow, or that it can come out somehow to be good. The truth is, I went on for a long time, and God did give me a lot of opportunities to turn back. I've obviously been coming to church, been hearing the word. I had faithful people, influence in my life. Obviously, my dad. He would give me advice, sound Christian advice about relationships, which I obviously didn't listen to at the time. Sean as well, another brother who would give me advice, knowing somewhat my situation. But I would hide it mostly, and I think that was hid out of shame, out of anything, because at the end of the day I knew the truth, but didn't want to ever face it. So to more recently, I had really gone far from God. I think that this last 2 or 2.5 years, I'd accepted the most recent relationship. I had accepted that I was going to marry the person. I had accepted that was my future. That was, it was a very serious relationship. That was the person I was going to marry. That was, that was my future. And I don't know when, but eventually we will be together. She's wasn't a Christian. She was a Muslim, from a Muslim background, and I had decided that although technically God doesn't want me to, but that somehow he doesn't really, he surely knows this relationship is good. He surely knows that regardless of that, there must be an exception for me, because he knows this relationship. He knows that the person's not telling me not to go to church and all these things. And that once I'm settled down, I will go to church. Once I've settled down, I will go back to God. And just, these are lies at the end of the day that you tell yourself. I told myself. And A couple of months ago, God, strange to say it, and it's something that I don't say lightly, and it's not something I've ever said before. God actually spoke to me in a dream, and I woke up from this dream. The dream was me. I was trying to climb a wall with other people, and it was very difficult to climb, and I was trying to get to the top, and I knew that the top was heaven, and I knew that death was coming, and I was just struggling my hardest to get there, and I got to the top, and I was just begging, just please allow me to come into heaven, allow me to enter heaven, because please, although I shouldn't technically be there, just allow it for me. Give me that opportunity. And I did. I just made it somehow at the end. I was the last one in and just crawled into heaven. Woke up from that moment. And I just had a feeling of kind of dread and of a weird feeling I've never had before. And God gave me that. It's like a burning feeling. And I was fighting it because at the end of the day, I had made my choice. I was in a relationship that I was happy. And I'd already settled it with myself that I can have a future and everything's okay. So I went through the whole day trying to fight this feeling at work, and telling God, it must be something else you're talking about. It must be, there's something else that I need to do in my life. Maybe I should go to church more. Or maybe I haven't read the Bible enough. Or maybe that, somehow God can be at the center of this relationship. And that somehow there's some way that God has for me that doesn't mean that I have to, that this relationship's the problem. So anyway, I went through the whole day fighting against that feeling, and I assumed and I hoped that feeling would go. A couple of hours in, I'd feel alright. I didn't get any sleep after waking up, and I just thought, it'll go. It's just one of those things. Once I get over it, I'll be alright. And got to the end of the day. I met up with my girlfriend at the time. And we spoke. We didn't meet up for any particular reason apart from just we were going to meet up anyway. And we were talking, and things just felt really odd, and I was just really kind of still feeling this really burning weight on my heart. Really, that's the only way I can describe it. And I just started talking, and I said, you know what? It's a good opportunity to prove that God can be the center of this relationship, that God could be here in this relationship, that we could continue in a godly way, we can change the course and make it about God. So we started discussing it and saying, I had a dream and it was really important that, I feel like it's really important we have God at the center of this relationship. And I was just talking, and she was agreeing, saying, yeah, God, we're at the center of the relationship, of course, yes, it's a good idea, it makes sense. And it was just as I was talking, it was as if God was just revealing the foolishness of what I was saying. Although what I was saying, and we were both agreeing, God was within me, just revealing the truth, basically, of the situation as I was speaking. It was about 3 hours of conversation. And by the end of it, I was saying, I genuinely believe that God is telling me that I'm at a crossroads again. I'm at a crossroads. And there's heaven and there's hell. And that's what the crossroads I'm at. And that's the only way I can describe it. That was the decision. Continue for hell or change for heaven. And that's the only way I can describe it. I was saying that I have to make a decision. And, God gave me the strength in the decision. And again, the wisdom of Sean, I spoke to Sean that evening, to help me in ending that relationship. That night, in fact, we had that conversation, and we went on to end the relationship after just over 3 years. And it's not been easy, on her and on me in a lot of ways, because at the end of the day, we're human. We're in a relationship. It was serious. We were serious about moving on. So it's not been easy on her, especially on her ultimately, because God's given me that strength from within, and obviously from her perspective, it's a very sudden change. So it's not been easy on her, but ultimately, to the glory of God, God has brought me out of the relationship that I feel it was grabbing my heart and pulling me away, slowly. And you never know, if I hadn't made that choice at those crossroads, I could have gone on to marry this person and gone on to move out of the house, and then where's God in my life? And maybe that was the time, the moment, the ultimate choice I had to make for God. So all I can say is in the last 2 months, God's given me the strength to go through that and to hang on. God's given me more joy, more peace, more patience, more everything of Him than I had in the relationship or in any aspect of my life. And what I've realized through the whole thing is that although when you're in a moment, you feel like it's the best or it's somehow the most appropriate or the most beneficial for your life, that ultimately God's plan doesn't work like that. That God's plan is the best plan, and whatever we think, whether we might not see the end result, we might think it's too difficult, but God always gives us the strength. In the moment, God will always give us the strength we need to overcome, and we just need to trust in God's strength. And and since then I've been blessed to be able to come back to church more, be involved more, just looking for opportunities more to kind of to live out a Christian life, and to stay strong, because it's a race at the end of the day. That is something I've discovered, I guess, from the first time. It wasn't good enough that I had turned to Jesus. It wasn't enough that I had just said, well, I believe in Jesus and thank you very much, and then walked off and then lived the rest of my life. It's a race we run. Although God saves you from the beginning, that it's a race you run, and it's a narrow path that you've got to stay on with Jesus and with God's help, and there's nothing you can do for yourself. You can obviously, I would appreciate obviously prayer for me, because it's not easy. For any of us, it's not easy. And obviously, I still have a human heart, a human element to me, if that makes sense. God's given me a spiritual element, and that obviously is the dominant element in my life. But pray that I don't forget. I think there's a song I sang at my baptism. I think we introduced it close to my baptism time. I have my mind made up and I won't turn back. Yeah. And just pray that will be my song from now until I die. That will be my song. Obviously, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll talk about the song now. The song I've chosen, I think, fits the Christian message, the message of being a wretch but being saved. And how deep the Father's love for us, how vast His love is, that He gave His Son to make a wretched treasure. And then it's, behold the man upon a cross, my sin upon His shoulders. And that's something He showed me more recently. As I said, to my shame, I've had to face the consequences of sin, which go obviously very deep. Ashamed I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. I feel that myself. I feel that I proclaim to be a Christian, but in my actions, in my life, in these relationships, in every situation I met, I wasn't living it out. And that's bringing God's name into disrepute. That's bringing shame to the name of God. If I can turn up to church one day and live my life in a different way than for the rest of the week, of course that's bringing shame to God, and of course that speaks a lot to me about where I was. That it was my sin that held Him there. His dying breath has brought me life. And then ultimately this being my song and my continuation of what it is. That sin is washed. Although I don't deserve it, and it's easy to say, but that sin is washed. I believe it. But I won't boast in what I can do or what I've done, because I've done nothing. I didn't wake myself up from a dream. I tried to fight it on the day. I tried to run away from God, even when He called me, even when He woke me up from a dream, even when He, gave everything to turn me around. I still tried to fight it. It's not me that's done this. It's not through my own strength or my own wisdom, because my wisdom got me into relationships I shouldn't be in. My wisdom got me into places I shouldn't be. So it's just to say that it's God that's done it for me. And when I sing this, I realize what I've done, what my sin does to the name of God, to Jesus, what he had to suffer for my sake, but also that ultimately he's brought me life, and I can boast in that, in Jesus and not in myself. But there, thank you. Let's sing this song together anyway. Let's enjoy it.